when it comes to staying updated with new laws and regulations, especially those that are property related,
Sure.
For you, how do you get updated? How do you stay abreast so that you can understand exactly what's happening in the property industry?
So not a moment goes by.
Because 5 years.
Yeah.
A lot changes. Every year there's a new regulation, there's a new law, there's something new every time.
So I think not necessarily, I'm not saying this is good advice for everyone, but not a moment goes by in my day where I'm not trying to do something that will advance me knowledge-wise. So every time I approach a case, it's never a matter of, it's the same case I did last week. I'm just going to rinse and repeat.
Jeez, yeah.
Even with the contracts that I draft, it's never rinse and repeat because you always miss something new that came, a new court case. So every time I do something, I almost refresh myself to go, but is it still relevant? Am I still doing it properly? When I jog, I've got headphones on and I've got every single thing that I listen to and ready to listen to. So 1 hour jog, I've got it, and I'm running to whatever tax webinar, because obviously in the property space, tax is a big one. So I've got tax webinars. Every time I'm in the car and I'm driving somewhere, I've got something playing in the background. It's the only way to stay relevant is, number one, to enjoy it, because it's something that you actually look forward to doing. And obviously, number two is to actually do it. Never be too busy to keep reading and keep learning and keep testing yourself and stress testing and keep debating with people, everyone. You know how much you learn from not even just lawyers, like just getting into conversations with property investors, because you've experienced something. I can promise you right now, if we sit for an hour, we have a drink together, you're going to tell me something where I'm going to ask you, but how did that work? And you're going to give me your insight, and the best thing for me to do is to run home afterwards and to quickly research it. So I've learned what you just told me, how it worked, and if it's something that I can apply in practice. Everyone can teach you.
Interesting. So in terms of having clients that are navigating complex property-related issues, what's the key advice that you always give those kind of clients?
Sure.
I mean, I know every case will be different, but there'll always be that common thing that you can give someone who's navigating complex issues.
Yeah. So I think, two things. Number one, take the emotion out of it.
That's a big one.
Emotion, I'm not saying emotion's bad, but as an attorney, it's my job to steer clear.
Do you guys even have emotions?
Sometimes I switch off when I get home. I think the conversation around emotive reactionary behavior is problematic. That's why auctions is the perfect example of reactive behavior or emotive behavior when it comes to buying, right? People go to the auction. Have you seen auctioneers, like some auctioneers? Like, without mentioning names, you go to some auctions,
play on the emotions,
and they sit next to you, and it's almost like, like football coaches when you watch American TV and football, and they sit and they motivate you, and they're in your ear, and they're telling you to buy, and you can win this bid. It becomes very emotive, and it's very important to take a step back. Everything that you do has to be pen, paper, and calculation, which then brings me to the first thing, which is the planning stage. Because emotion is very easy to get to if you haven't planned, so your scope or range of decision-making is far broader. If you've put pen to paper and you've done a calculation, you know that your range is only this big. So no matter if somebody's screaming in your ear on how great this deal is, or somebody's giving you bad advice that you must go lock the tenants out, or you've done the calculation, you understand these are the risks and this is the area I'm willing to work on. Anything outside of this area is discomfort, and no one's going to push me to do it. Because the worst cases that I get are cases on principle, because they never go through. 6 months down the line, principle disappears and cost starts becoming a factor. And that's normally when I tell clients, your case is purely based on principle. For example, some landlords trying to collect from tenants. I always sit the landlord down, think about it. I know right now you're gutted. You're gutted that he didn't pay rent. But how much money do you think you're going to throw at this It's someone that couldn't afford to pay you rent. How much money do you think you're going to throw at it? And do you really think you're going to get any of it back? Like, take a week, sleep on it before you proceed.
Go the litigation route
because
on the
there's
matter.
no point. I like my clients. I want my clients to come back to me the next time round. I don't want them to pay me and then at the end I go, well, sorry, got zero.
That's interesting because it speaks to the next question. I wanted to ask, when navigating through the contracts, right? So say, for instance, your client wants to sign a property-related deal. What are the things that they need to look at in terms of reviewing those contracts? And it could be property or buying a business for that matter. I mean, what do you think are the key things that they need to look at and the process they need to go through in terms of reviewing those contracts? Because sometimes you're not there and maybe the deal might pass them and they want to make sure that they clinch on the deal.
Exactly.
But the attorney maybe is busy, he's on holiday. What do they do? What are the things?
We're never on holiday, don't worry. I can't remember the last time I had a holiday. So I think the best advice, especially when it comes to commercial matters and contracts, when buying property and when buying a business, those are obviously two different contracts in the sense that buying a property is like buying an asset, right? So any asset that you're buying, you need to deal with it a certain way. But if you're buying shares in a business, for example, you look at different things. So fundamentally, there's differences. If I had to try find the commonalities between these type of commercial arrangements, first of all, if you're rushing into it, it's already a bad sign. Pen to paper, you haven't spoken to the lawyer, so your planning and your range is already very broad, right? So the best thing you can do in these contracts is always to have that exit. And this applies to property with suspensive conditions. It applies to business deals with...
Can you tell them what suspensive conditions mean?
Sure.
You can continue and then explain
Cool.
what suspensive conditions would be in property and what an example of suspensive conditions would be when buying a business.
Sure. So a suspensive condition in our law is it's basically the subject to. The contract is entered into, but the effect of the contract or the enforceability of the contract is suspended until the occurrence of an event. So it's basically like a trigger. So you've entered into the contract and there's certain obligations you need to get through to be able to fulfill the suspensive conditions. So as a typical example, I buy a property. And you're supposed to give me this property. I'm supposed to give you R1 million for the property. That's the contract. But that's suspended. You're not going to give me the property. I'm not going to give you the R1 million until I've applied for finance or go to the bank, get a loan, right? As an example. Now, yes, now there's still an obligation on me to approach the bank. But there's no obligation on you to give me the property. There's no obligation on me to give you the money. I do have to go to the bank though. But if the bank says no, then we're out. The contract falls away. Unenforceable. We get to go our different ways and I get to go buy another property. You get to go sell it somewhere else. So all the suspensive condition does is it gives you an easy exit so that you don't bind yourself. And that's, for example, a mistake some people make when it comes to sheriff's auctions. They don't realize, because they assume all property transactions have suspensive conditions that you can go to the bank and get a loan. Sheriff's auctions don't.